If you watched the Power last night, I think we talked through. We had a pretty good discussion about expectations, and I'm clearly trying to front run a lot of things, and I'm not pleased. It's not good enough for me. Maybe I'm just difficult to please. But 175 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse seems like a low number. I feel like we should have way higher than that. If you want a more detailed examination of that thread, I would encourage you to go watch last night's episode of the Power Hour. It was a pretty good discussion, I think. No updates on the website either, the White House website, nothing new. But okay, this is what I want to get into. Let's start with this video. So Kash Patell was on with Brett Baer yesterday, and then today we have Dan Bonino on with Fox and Friends this morning, and some interesting stuff being said. And so I want to play this first. This has to do with Epstein.
In public interest. I'm just telling you what we see in the file. I just want to be crystal clear on this. I am not asking anyone to believe me. I'm telling you what's there and what isn't.
Right.
There is nothing in the file at this point on the Epstein case, and there's going to be a disclosure on this coming shortly. We are working through there is video. That is something the public does not.
There's video of him killing himself.
No, not the actual act, but the entire MCC Bay, it was only one camera. There's video that when you look at the video, and we will release, that's what's taken a while on this. We are working on cleaning it up to make sure you have an enhanced, and we're going to give the original so you don't think there were any shenanigans. You're going to see there's no one there but him.
Right.
There's just nobody there. So I say to people all the time, if you have a tip, let us know. But there's no DNA, there's no audio, there's no fingerprints, there's no suspects, there's no accomplices, there's no tips, there is nothing. If you have it, I'm happy to see it. There's video clear as day. He's the only person in there and the only person coming out. You can see it.
So again, he's kind of doubling down on the Epstein thing, which, it's not surprising. I've kind of always thought, I know it's so memeable, the moment the Epstein didn't kill himself thing, but I've always thought it's possible. It's possible he did. And I know the evidence they have, the video, it doesn't go directly on his cell, and it'll just be interesting to see what they release. I'm glad they're going to release the video at some point. That's what I said. I was like, great, if you saw this, I'll believe you, but I also want to verify myself. So let's see it. And they're gonna, it sounds like, put that out. But there's a couple more comments I want to get to. I'm just gonna do one thing here quick. Okay, I want to kind of nerd out here a little bit and show you a couple clips. I'm going to show you Kash Patell first. Let me go here. Because there's three main cases that they're talking about now. Again, besides the Epstein one, it's the 2021 DC pipe bombings, the leak of the Supreme Court decision, the Dobbs decision, and the cocaine found in the White House. Now, yesterday on Brett Baer, or Baer, or whatever, however you say his name, Baer, this is what Kash Patell had to say.
Reestablished that investigations of great public importance that almost blew up the DNC and RNC in Washington, D.C., an area in which then Vice President Harris was in the vicinity of, is something that needs to be answered. And we learned that FBI leadership in the prior administration slow-rolled and basically shut that investigation off. So we turned it on, and we have some great leads, and Dan is actually going to talk about that when he does Fox and Friends tomorrow.
Okay. You don't want to give us a little something?
I can't get ahead of everybody.
All right. What did you make of?
So he's talking about the pipe bomb with that one. Okay, so the thing that almost blew up the DNC and RNC. And we have some great leads, and Dan is actually going to talk about that tomorrow on Fox and Friends. And so that would be today. And then I want to show you two parts here that I think are just interesting, because let me start with the first one, and I think you'll see where I'm going. Let's do it right. Let's start right here.
Some suspects. The reason, by the way, I use social media with these cases, I'm trying to communicate on social media, is nothing's by accident, guys. I do nothing by accident. Every time I put a tweet out on it, we get tips. We got a fascinating tip. on one of these cases, one of the three. I don't want to say which one, but I'm pretty confident that we're going to close out one of them, hopefully shortly. And then the cocaine in the White House.
Okay. He says we got a fascinating tip on one of the three. Remember, these are the three. Pipe bombings, leak of the Supreme Court Dobbs decision, cocaine found in the White House. The way he says this, he's talking about we got a fascinating tip on one of the three, and then he says, and the cocaine in the White House, then he goes on to that. So that makes me believe the cocaine in the White House is not the one he got a tip on, leaving just the two other ones. But let me play this part one more time just so you see what I'm seeing or hear what I'm hearing.
One of the three. I don't want to say which. We got a fascinating tip on one of these cases, one of the three. I don't want to say which one, but I'm pretty confident that we're going to close out one of them, hopefully shortly. And then the cocaine in the White House, you know, I saw someone on social media, which is fine. Everybody's entitled to an opinion. We work for you, but said, I don't care about the case. Yeah, I do.
I think he may have been talking about me there too. I don't care about the case because I posted this yesterday. I'd rather see the FBI look into the 2020 election instead of who had cocaine in the White House. I have engaged with Dan Bongino on Twitter since he's become the deputy director as well. Like I've DM'd with him a little bit. Nothing crazy, but I think he was probably talking about me there. But I wasn't the only one saying it, so I could just be letting that get to my head. But okay, do you see what I'm saying though? He's talking about the three cases. Then he says they got a tip on something. And then he goes on to talk about also the cocaine in the White House. So that to me tells me that's separate from the one they got the tip on. But there's another section here where they're talking about the cases. Let me go to this video.
Decision and the cocaine in the White House. You say one of them within a day or two, we're going to have a major break.
Well, we've got a good tip this morning.
You got a good tip this morning. I'm just confused. They got a good tip this morning. When Cash was on with Brett Baer, they were talking about what Dan Bongino was going to say about the DC pipe bomber on Fox and Friends, right? So one more time back to this.
Washington, D.C., an area in which then Vice President Harris was in the vicinity of, is something that needs to be answered. And we learned that FBI leadership in the prior administration slow rolled and basically shut that investigation off. So we turned it on, and we have some great leads. And Dan is actually going to talk about that when he does Fox and Friends tomorrow.
Okay.
So if we're assuming these guys are both telling the truth here, which I'm going to give these two the benefit of the doubt. There's not many people in our current government that I'd be willing to give the benefit of the doubt to. Trump is one for sure, and then these two are probably the next two, if I'm being totally honest. Kash Patel, obviously a huge fan, Patel Patriot. Dan Bongino, I've followed his work and I've met him in person. I've met both these guys in person. But okay, so assuming they're both telling the truth, Kash Patel says they've got some great leads on the pipe bomber stuff, and Dan Bongino is going on Fox and Friends to talk about it in the morning. Dan Bongino is on Fox and Friends, and he says, we got a good tip this morning on one of the three, and I don't think that was the pipe bombing one, because Kash Patel said going into it that he's going to talk about some of the stuff we're doing with the J6 pipe bombing one tomorrow. And then also when I showed you this earlier about the cocaine in the White House being like the separate one, I think they've got information on who leaked the Dobbs one based on my, in-depth, certainly not autistic analysis that I just did. Does that make sense? He was going on Fox and Friends to talk about the DC pipe bombing stuff. He's going to have an update. Dan Bongino on Fox and Friends says this morning we have new evidence on one of the three. I'm not going to tell you which one. And then the cocaine in the White House being a separate one. So to me, that eliminates the DC pipe bomber and the cocaine in the White House. I think we're going to get news on who leaked the Dobbs decision, which that could be interesting. And I could be totally wrong and way overreading into it. But if that's the case, I feel like then one of these guys is lying about the tip. And it's interesting that Dan Bongino would say, like, we got a really good tip this morning that we're going to follow through on. How do you know it's a good tip that quickly? I mean, he was on Fox and Friends super early in the morning. But yeah, I mean, getting these guys out here talking publicly, there's a lot of these investigations that I do want to get to the bottom of. there's obviously one that I think takes precedent over everything, and that's the 2020 election theft. Talked about this a lot last night too. Like we need, that's the one I want to see fixed, but I understand wanting to run down all these things. And gosh, who was it? There was it might have been on one of these. Let me look at something real quick. The nice thing about recording early is I can pause it when I need to search for something, and that's what I'm doing. I might do that a few times, but I think this is the part I want to play. I'm gonna go ahead and go for it.
We're finding stuff even now. Wait till you read the stuff that's coming out.
Does he still have loyalists in the building? Because when I hear the FBI director saying, you guys are finding boxes that are hidden, okay, how does that happen in the Bureau?
Well, we were there a couple of weeks, and luckily there were a lot of people up there who grabbed us by the arm the minute we came in and said, thank you for being here. You know, we need to talk. There are people there who are really horrified at what happened. And there was a room, and we found stuff, a lot of stuff.
A hidden room.
I wouldn't call it hidden, but hidden from us at least, and not mentioned to us. And then we found stuff in there, and a lot of it's from the Comey era, and we are working our damnedest right now to declassify. And just so you know, because I get the public, I totally understand people saying, well, do it now. The process is not all the information is ours to declassify. Some is other intelligence agencies. It's not, we literally can't do it. Once that gets done and that gets out there, and you read some of the stuff we found that, by the way, was not processed through the normal procedure, digitizing it, putting in FBI records. We found it in bags, hiding under Jim Comey's FBI. Quickly, you're going to be stunned.
The shells on the beach. Can you?
That's nuts. These people were hiding information about cases. And like, I still don't understand that process, that thought process. Like, if they were able to hide this stuff, allegedly, that nobody else could find, I mean, why would they not just destroy the evidence? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just asking from the criminal perspective. You're about to leave, and you have Trump coming back into office, and you know this evidence exists. Somebody put it there, hid it, according to the story we're being told. Why would they not just destroy it? Which, I mean, you know that has to happen, right? With these law enforcement people. And so my thought process behind this is I don't think this story we're getting is necessarily accurate. I think some of this evidence they had elsewhere, like the Russiagate binder that supposedly went missing. We've talked about that before. You know, that what if that was in the White Hat's possession the entire time? And this is the story they're telling us of how they're going to tell the world about it. You know, we found it in a room that we were never supposed to look into. It just, the story doesn't pass the snuff test for me, you know? I'm going to pause it real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, I got to play this clip too, because this has to do with the story we're going to discuss here. Let me play this.
Continuing production. We have found material, and I'm the Crossfire Hurricane guy, that I didn't even know existed in FBI holdings.
So there's been held someplace else, or?
That's been stashed away in locations that people thought we wouldn't find it because we wouldn't know to look for it there. And as promised with my congressional partners, I'm working with Congress on constitutional oversight, because that's what the American people deserve. And those documentations have been flowing to Congress nonstop on a rolling basis since that interview. But more importantly, people have had questions about January 6th and whether or not there were FBI sources, not agents.
Okay, so it's the Crossfire Hurricane stuff, again, that I find so interesting, considering Kash Patell's role at the end of Trump's first term, when he was the chief of staff to the Secretary of Defense, and formerly before that, the Crossfire Hurricane guy, and then the story of the Russiagate binder that went missing. Is that why they went and raided Mar-a-Lago? A lot of people speculated something like that. And he's saying here that they're finding these documents in this room that they didn't know existed, all these things.